Welcome back to SledgeHammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Brandon Starocci. Brandon, how you doing today, man?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I am so excited to have you here. Now, Brandon, in order to be able to talk about what we're going to talk about today, I want the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit first. Brandon is the creator and writer of Avalon, the comic book. In high school, he figured that he wanted to be a Hollywood director since he was in love with film growing up. Um, Now, with his interest, he went and visited the New York Film Academy in New York City, but that just wasn't quite the right fit. So, after trying to find other avenues to exercise his creation abilities, he converted to writing. Now, after sitting on the idea of Avalon since high school, him and his partner Alan came together and made Avalon what it is today. So, obviously, if we're going to talk about these things, we need to talk about Avalon a little bit. When are we going to have a physical release, and when can people be expecting to have that in their hands?
So we have 3 issues out right now physically. So you could get that really anywhere. We primarily people who aren't in the area that we are in Erie, Pennsylvania. You can get it on our Shopify store. We're selling all 3 issues right now. Sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. We just sold out of the first print of issue 1. We have to buy more prints of issue 1. That is currently physical is out of stock. You can buy the digital copies, all 3 of them, and you can get issues 2 and 3 in physical form right now as well. But we're working on getting issues 4 and 5 out, hopefully by the end of this summer, like fallish time, to get both of those issues out, and then obviously to finish the kind of the season volume that we have here. We're hoping to get issue 6 out by the end of the year as well. So we're really trying to make some good moves here and get everything out.
Well, he was just talking about his links. So anybody that knows me knows what that means. You don't got to go far to look for those links because all those links are down here in the description below. So I always feel like when you're a horror fan, you're kind of a collector in general. Growing up, I was a huge horror fan. I collected baseball cards, which I still do. I collected comic books, which I still do. And I just feel like that collector part of you. I collect action figures. I collect everything horror. I collect comic books still to this day. I have a long box sitting right over there full of some of my favorite comic books of all time. Now, is horror and comic books, is that kind of an easy transition for you to bounce back and forth between the two?
Oh, yeah. I was a big horror kind of fan. My dad really is, and my uncle really is as well. That you're saying, like, you collect all the horror figures and all that stuff. I'm thinking about going to my uncle's house, and he has it plastered all over the living room and his bedroom and all that stuff too. It's just all over the place. He's always showing me something else he's got and all that. But same thing for me. I collect right now. I collect the stuff I really like Evil Dead, Halloween stuff, and The Thing. Just things like that. I collect those figures and other little merchandise things. But to kind of bounce back and forth the comics and the horror, yeah, I find it pretty easy for me, at least, just because I really enjoy writing the comic and recently reading comics as well, more than ever. And then horror has always been in my interest since I was young.
Right. Well, and I feel like, comic books have gotten much more grittier the older we've gotten. And so
Yeah.
it is easier to make that connection between horror and comic books. And there's a lot of great horror comic books out there. So before we talk about why you're here, Brandon, a little bit about Avalon. Obviously, I want to keep this as spoiler free as possible because I would like
Right.
for people to check it out. I was lucky enough to read the first 3 issues. And what can you tell people a little bit about the comic and what it is?
So Avalon, it's it's a brand new post-apocalyptic comic book. The biggest kind of slogan that we're rolling with here is Avalon has a little bit of something for everybody. We touch on a bunch of different things. The main thing being we're trying to ground this world in as much reality as we can with Avalon, and we're taking a little bit of a different approach than you would see in your traditional kind of zombie ongoing series. Instead of following so-called like a hero's journey, kind of like how you follow Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead or Joel in The Last of Us, since that's kind of relevant right now as well. But we're making the world almost the main character. The world is dictating what happens, and you're following the Castle family that you meet in issue 1 through this journey. But so they're all kind of like the main character. It's not one particular character that's like, okay, we're following Andy per se. We're following Ty or whatever other character. It's really the family and their kind of goals and their kind of beliefs and all that stuff is what we're following inside of this world that we're really developing each and every day. We're creating more issues to come.
And I can't wait for you guys to check this out. Because like you said, there is this uniqueness to it, but there's a familiarity to it as well, which makes it when you're looking for something new, but you want that familiar feeling. This
Sure.
is
Yeah.
what I would absolutely recommend to you guys. So, like I said, not only do I have the links for the comic in the description, but I have all of Brandon's social media links as well. So make sure you're following them on social media. That way you can stay up to date on when new issues are dropping or if they start to work on something completely different after the events of Avalon. So make sure that you are following everything down here in the description. Now, in order for you to make a horror themed, and I am going to say horror themed because that's who
Yeah.
I am,
Yeah. Yeah.
a horror themed comic book, you obviously, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now, Brandon, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Brandon, your first horror movie was.
It was the original Halloween. I cannot remember how young I was, but I remember being very young. And I I had the same recurring Michael Myers nightmare for many years, and there's obviously that classic thing to Halloween and all that stuff. And I actually see your shirt now. That's actually it's funny. I saw the John Carpenter back and forth, but yeah, Halloween was it. And like I said, many years I've had the same Michael Myers nightmare. I can even kind of briefly touch it. I was at my grandma's house for whatever reason, and
Yeah.
this dream, and I just could not escape this dream. Michael Myers was always, there's just nothing I could do to get away from him. So I would have to say Halloween is basically what did it. It was my first horror movie, and it was also just a classic to me. It always had that same kind of like punch to me than the first time I watched it to now.
Well, and I've said this before, and for people that are repeat viewers, I'm sorry you have to hear this again, but I'm very adamant about this. Halloween has never been my favorite horror franchise. I've never been a huge fan of it, and the reason why is it came a little later for me. I grew up watching a lot of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
Child's Play, and you go from that to Halloween, and it's kind of boring. Halloween is a guy in a white mask stabbing people, and it was a little boring to me. But what I will say is, while I truly believe in my heart that films like Psycho, Black Christmas, those really started the slasher genre, a movie like Halloween perfected the slasher
Yeah.
genre. And without a movie like Halloween, we wouldn't have a lot of the slashers that we have today. And that's just a fact. Halloween really came in and showed you that you need to see just as much of your villain as you do your hero. So you can have them playing off each other. It almost like that comic book feeling of Batman and the Joker. What's one without the other? And so as a 37-year-old man now, I look at Halloween as one of the scariest horror franchises because it's just some guy. This isn't a dream demon. This isn't a kid that drowned in a lake and came back. This is just your next door neighbor that fucking snapped, put on a mask, and started killing people. There's a lot of realism, especially in Halloween '78. There's a lot of very realness to that film. It is the boogeyman.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Like that is definitely the boogeyman, but it is a man. So that's why I feel like this movie is so scary and so impactful. So we know you were quite young watching the film, but do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most the first time you had seen it?
No, not necessarily having that first like thing where it's like sticks out to me. I think it's just for me, it's just that like you were mentioning though too is the realness of it, and that it could just simply be your neighbor. And it is just I mean, how they portrayed it in '78 was they just portrayed it to be some guy who was just an evil man. He just did things he just killed. Didn't care, didn't whatever. I think it was just the realness of it and having that kind of effect. Obviously being young, just being scared in general because it's a big guy with a white mask and stabbing people. But just overall, when you look at it now, it has those like impactful things where it's just like you mentioned as well, where it's like you're showing him a lot. He's the main character in that almost. So it was just that for me, and it'll always be that for me to kind of keep looking or referring back to it and all that stuff. Even watching the new trilogy with it definitely holds it, and I do enjoy it, obviously. But I guess saying that as well, just there were a couple of those ones that I was like, the new ones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it goes back to, even in that one, like you have the scene where Laurie takes his mask off and he steps out into the light and you can see that he's just a guy. And then he pulls that mask back down. You have moments like that are just like truly like heart wrenching and terrifying because it's like, this isn't a guy that got burned up. This isn't some monster. It's just a guy.
Yeah.
And obviously we love kills as horror fans. We love to watch the kills. It's something we live vicariously through. What would you say the kill was that stuck with you the most from 78?
He did the same thing in 78 that he did in the new trilogy, where he stabbed the teenager and stuck him up on the wall and he stared at him, right?
Bob.
Boom. Yep. Okay. I was hoping that was the first one because I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah, it was because that's the kill when you said that. That was the kill that automatically sticks with me. And then when he stops and stares at it's not really so much doing it, yeah, and stabbing, and then that's it. It's the stop. It's like the admiring the kill that he just did and all that stuff, and kind of analyzing it too is what's like, wow, this is kind of like some shit, but.
It's funny because Halloween is my wife's, it's Ashley's favorite horror franchise. And she always looks at that like, she's like, this is how I look at my kids' art when I put it on the fridge. Like I put it up there.
Yeah, just can't in the head. You're like, yeah, you're analyzing it.
And, you just talked a little bit about, is it from this one? Is it from that one? And Halloween is a big franchise. We're up to 13 films in the Halloween franchise now. And when I talk about a franchise movie, I always ask the same question. Which movie in the Halloween, we know that Halloween 78 was your first, but which movie in the franchise would you say is your favorite in the Halloween franchise?
It would be close between 2018 and 78, and I think the only reason 78 is close really is because it's just a classic feel to me. It has that, I'll always have that like inner feeling where it's just like it scared the shit out of me. It was the first one I watched, but 18 to me was like a perfect up to date version of 78. And they did it very similar, and they still hit those same points, but in like an up to date kind of style and all that stuff too. But I really enjoyed 18 a lot. And this might not be a popular opinion either, but I do like the Rob Zombie adaptations of them. I can already see it on your face. Like,
well,
no.
I mean, to be completely honest with you, if we're talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween, if you take out the first act of that movie, like with Michael being like a little kid and all that shit, like,
no,
I love it because like what I don't like about that is I don't even care about it being like Rob Zombie's wife. I don't give a shit about all that. Because if I made movies, Ashley would be in every single fucking movie I made too. If I made Jaws, Ashley would be the shark. Like that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But Michael was not a kid that was bullied and treated bad by his stepdad. He was pure evil. He had the devil's eyes, the blackest eyes. So that's what turned me off from Rob Zombie's Halloween. Like the rest of it, banger. Like I think that movie I love Rob Zombie's Halloween. Once you get past that first act, when you get to adult Michael, like he is just a bad dude.
He's like, evil. Yeah, right. I do understand that too. And I've watched people and I've heard opinions about it as well. It's where Rob Zombie tries to almost not justify it, but he tries to explain his evil. And it's like, you don't need to do that with Michael Myers. Like Michael Myers is he's just evil. He's just evil.
Just is.
Right. And I think, like you said, you do take that away a little bit. Adult Michael, I just like the brutality with the Michael, the big, because I think the actor that got playing him was like 6'6", 6'7" or something.
Tyler
like that.
Mane.
Yeah. So I'm like, so it's just that big presence and the brutalness that he brought to it as well. And the grunting was one thing too. And when he's really like fucking these people up, I'm like, damn, this is scary shit. But I really did like some of it. Even the second one, there's some parts where I really enjoyed, but the
second one is the Friday the 13th movie. Like, and I've said that for a long time. Like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is more of a Friday the 13th movie than it is a Halloween movie. You got Michael with his mom issues and all that stuff. Like, I just feel like it's more of a Friday the 13th type film than it is a Halloween film. I don't like how Michael talks in it. That really bothers me.
Yeah.
But Brad Dourif's performance as Sheriff Brackett is beautiful.
Oh yeah. I agree with you there because it's like I was just watching a scene probably like a month ago of him like walking up to Lori when I think it was a trailer. I think I was just like watching the trailer again because I was like hyped up for it. But when he's like talking to Lori, and I'm just like, yeah, he really did a good job in that movie. And
when he's like, crying and he's holding Annie, like I cry every time I watch that scene, man. Like Brad Dourif is just so. I mean, obviously Chucky. He's obviously Chucky, but like the Gemini Killer in The Exorcist 3, Sheriff Brackett in this movie, like he's so underrated in some of the other roles that he does. So I do want to bounce back to 78 here for a second because we talked about the scene that affected you the most, which we didn't really have a conclusive one there. But what would you say your favorite scene from Halloween 78 is?
My favorite scene of 78. I'm trying to dust off the DVD in my head. The first thing, I mean, really, I wouldn't say it's my favorite scene, but it's a scene that's coming to my mind that I really enjoyed. Is just him following Lori and me working on other projects right now, like the stalkerish kind of, feel. And I'm working on other like short films and feature films right now as well. And I want to hold that same like creep factor in it. And I really enjoyed how they did it with the camera angles and how it's like the camera is Michael, and then she turns around and then like she sees the guy with a white mask sitting there, and then and then he's gone. It's just that creep element. That's the one thing that's coming to mind. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I just can't think of it. I'm telling you, if I watched it right now, I'd be able to be like, yep, that's it right there. But that's a big thing that I really enjoyed about that one, and how I kind of put it in my other work that I'm working on right now as well, is just trying to bring that creepy aspect to it and realness of it, and just very weird, weird, creepy, scary, all those things and more.
Yeah, no, I understand, because that's one of the best things about Halloween 78 is Michael's creepiness and stalkerishness. I think that's what makes that movie what it is. Now, we know how horror started for you with Halloween 1978, but now I want to throw a little bit of a curveball here at you for a second. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Brandon? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
I guess I'm trying to think of like what's included with that.
You know what? Horror to me is what you make it. I consider Terminator a horror slasher film. Okay. I consider Jurassic Park a horror film. Like, if it's horror to you, you can't lock down what a horror movie is. You can't say, well, it has to have murder. The Lion King has murder. It has to be scary. I was scared shitless of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I don't consider that a horror movie. The Large Marge scene scared the piss out of me. So, I mean, like, if you consider it a horror movie, I would love to hear it.
Okay, I will say, I'll say two, and I'm gonna say this one first because it has a lot of I've watched it not when I was real young, but younger, was 30 Days of Night. There's a lot of scenes, there's a lot of the acting, just the whole dynamic of the film just hits with me a lot, and I bring a lot of that into Avalon. Just that feeling, the scariness feeling, the helplessness feeling, all that kind of stuff. I enjoyed that movie. I do consider it a horror thing because of the way the vampires are.
Vampires, man. Of course, it's a horror movie.
But I would say this as well. The first Insidious, I guess, do you consider that horror or just like scary?
Oh, okay, that's totally a horror movie.
Okay, man. I wasn't sure if those were two different like categories or whatever.
No, for me, like, I don't give a shit about subgenre. Like, if it's a horror comedy, if it's a slasher horror, if it's religious horror, it's horror. And Insidious, to this day, I think has one of the best jump scares with the Red Demon.
Oh, like, fuck. Yeah. And that was one of the things too. And I wanted to get 30 Days a Night in there because it's, of the reasons I just mentioned, but Insidious, the first Insidious was just like, wow, because I wasn't scared from a lot of movies before then, and I'm looking for that next scary movie. And then like this came out, I'm like, let's see. And then boom. And then you're like, holy shit. Like you said, a bunch of jump scares. And it's just like, the first one, I have my opinions about what do they call it? And then the underworld, what the hell is it called? What is it called? The one they go in that black kind of like the underworld.
Oh, the further.
Yeah. I didn't. That was like okay to me, the whole like thing, but they took it. It wasn't really shown in the first one a lot. It was just kind of discussed. But the way the jump scares and all that stuff, the story and all that stuff, acting in it as well, all good. I liked Insidious.
I will say, I think Insidious is one of the scariest. Insidious Chapter 2 is my favorite in that franchise, man. Like that, there's something about Chapter 2 that is just so evil and demonic. And
that's on with the old lady, right?
Yeah. Black Bride.
Yeah.
And it's just, that whole movie is just so dope to me. I love that movie. Now, obviously, we've talked about all these different things about what has made you the horror fan that you are. Now, before I let you go, I always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Halloween 1978. And what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, nothing like that. What we're doing here is strictly ranking Halloween 1978 on how it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Brandon, what would your ranking of Halloween 1978 be?
I am going to be like, oh, really? I am going to give it a 5. And the reason it is for many reasons, like I mentioned throughout the show here, is just like it was my first one. It had that impact. I had the same nightmare kind of follow me for many years, and it would just be reoccurring, and obviously it's just that was the opening for this genre to me. I mean, Michael Myers is my favorite horror villain and all that stuff too. It's just like it has so much impact and so much influence on my life and my horror kind of fan, whatever you want to call it. I'm at a loss of words right now, but like it just opened the bridge for all this stuff, and I think it just has that huge impact on me.
And it does a lot of people. This movie has affected people, and it's still affecting them today. So, guys, we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll, and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, like I said earlier, there's some social media links down in the description that could use your loving. So make sure you're checking them out. Make sure you check out the comic book, not for him or me, but for yourself. You're going to really, really enjoy this. Brandon, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, also make sure you like, subscribe, and make sure you're following Sledgehammer Horror on social media so you can stay up to date on everything that we're doing. And until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.